A lot of hands here. I'm going to start here, and then we'll rotate back and forth.
Just to follow up on that, you guys both acknowledge that the tax gap is an issue to some extent. Is it an issue big enough worth addressing? If so, sort of what are Republicans' ideas about how to go about collecting taxes that are legally owed?
Well, first of all, yes, it's big enough that we ought to look at it, but we shouldn't create this kind of phenomenal dragnet in order to do so. So what should we do? That's a tough question to answer. A lot of the changes that we need to make probably are changes to the current law. A lot of the things that some of my colleagues claim are loopholes are maybe loopholes in the sense that the law allows something to happen that it shouldn't allow to happen, so deductions or credits or what have you. But I think that there can be corrections in the law if there are loopholes that are identified. Secondly, Senator Kennedy just referenced not being able to contact the IRS on the telephone. I mean, that's literally true. They don't answer the phones anymore. They don't have technology that allows them to do taxpayer service that allows honest taxpayers to understand what they need to do to pay their taxes. And all of the analysts tell us that if we can just give adequate taxpayer service and get the IRS stepped back up to where it can provide service on the existing tax code, that will generate greater compliance and greater revenue to the Treasury. And I'm sure there are a number of other ideas, but the idea to just create a dragnet like this is not the right one. Now here?
Well, the Democrats have said that this proposal was also to go after tax evaders. So do Republicans not see eye to eye on that message, or do you think that Democrats have an ulterior motive to this proposal?
Well, first of all, again, I can only speak for me, but I don't think there's any Republican who would say they don't think that the IRS should be able to identify tax evaders and collect the taxes that are being evaded. The question is, do you need to create a mechanism where the people of America have to give up their privacy on all of their financial transactions in order to do so? And so there's got to be some ground in the middle. We do need to be able to have more effective tax compliance, but we don't need to do it this way. Yes?
We know that the idea of moving the threshold up to $10,000, this comes after pushback from all of you, and we've heard from Americans who've been calling their banks, et cetera. Do you think that there's hope here for further pushing this up or getting rid of it altogether? What's your
Well, I think I think the fact that you see the Treasury Department putting out a statement today saying we won't do it, and the fact that you see all of these comments coming forward and saying, okay, we'll increase the threshold from 600 to 10,000. My first comment on that is, why did they start at $600? And I believe the answer to that is because they wanted to go after all of the people on Schedule C and Schedule E and collect the money from them. Then they got caught at this, and they said, well, we're not going to do that. But they haven't. All they've said in response to we're not going to do that is we'll agree to let it go up to 10,000. To answer that question, I again refer back to my data on what the average American family receives and spends in a year. That still covers virtually all of them. But I had a roundtable on this in Idaho last week. And in that roundtable, there were people from all different parts of the economy. But one of the small business owners who was at that roundtable made a point that I think is very telling in response to your question. He said, I have a small business and I'm not a wealthy person. He didn't say what his income was, but I know it was way less than $400,000. I got the feeling it was probably less than $100,000. But he said, I got a small business. And he said, I move a lot of money through my business account. But I don't have a profit margin that moves a lot of that into my personal account. But he said, if you look at my account, my small business account, it'll have more than $1 million of transactions in and out. And so that means, that all of that goes to the IRS. And then remember what I said about the IRS having the broad authority to issue the rules and regulations to help them do with this data what they want to do with this data. That means they're going to dig deeper into his account. That means they're going to audit him. And he's audited just because he's running more money through a small business account. My point is that every small business in America is going to be hit at the $10,000 level. And I don't think the concern is going to go down. And the final answer to your question was that I think the concern is going to continue to rise. Yes, and then we'll go back here and then over here.
Following up on that
61,000 number that you're citing, one thing Secretary Yellen also said today is that the proposal would exempt all wage income
Right.
from taxable the $10,000 threshold. Would this still then hit everyday Americans if wage income, which most people earn, is exempted?
Yes, it will. I mean, at least on the expenditure side, unless they don't spend their income, and if their only income is wages, that's already reported to the IRS, which, by the way, is why they said, well, we don't need the wage income. But if the only income that a household has is wages, I'm pretty sure they're going to spend some of that income and hit the $10,000 threshold, and then they're pulled into the game.
Actually, I will make this maybe the last.
Well, I said I'd go over here, and so I'll go here. Last one, and then really last one.
Is there any threshold that would change your opinion on this? Any threshold, maybe like over a million? Anything that would change your mind? How you do this?
Actually, I suppose that you could probably find one, but it would have to be one that was so high that small businesses weren't pulled in to the net. And I don't know how to say what that is, but it's going to be millions. And I think that a better approach to this, instead of saying, well, we'll increase the thresholds, is for that. If they say we're just going to audit billionaires, then why don't they just say we'll only audit billionaires? That keeps us from having to argue all these points. I'm not saying I would support that either, but that would start getting into the zone of at least making it honest about what they were trying to do. They could even just say we won't allow any audits of people who make less than $400,000 a year. But I don't see them agreeing to do that. So there's things that could make this better. I'm not going to tell you what the threshold is where I'd be comfortable with it, but there's a lot of people being brought into this unnecessarily. Okay, you get the last question.
Thank you. Given the concern of the tax gap and the concern that this would be more of a dragnet and not the way to approach taxing people who are evading their taxes, do you think it's worth revisiting an increase in funds to the IRS to increase enforcement, to boost staffing, hire more auditors?
Yeah, that's it. I got a bill that goes down that road. And it does talk about the kind of protections against the kinds of focus on people making $400,000 and so forth. But the point is, restate your question. Do I think?
Do you think it's worth going back to the idea of increased funds to the IRS?
Yes. Yes, and my answer to that is yes. I've said all along that the IRS needs to be in the 21st century as far as technology. They've got to have a phone system that works. They've got to have people operating the phones, and I'm just being technical. I mean, I'm being very basic there. They need to have the ability to do taxpayer servicing, not taxpayer snooping. And if they just get that ability, if we give them the ability to upgrade their IT and give them the ability to get more personnel to operate the IT and the taxpayer services part of the IRS, I think that would be a huge improvement. All right, thank you all for coming.